I'm Kipp Corbus, and back on the Redirect podcast, I matter, and I'm excited to help explore how you do too.
Hey there. Welcome to the Redirect podcast. This is where we dive into real conversations, share stories, and just hang out talking about finding our purpose in retirement. We're glad you're along for the ride, and let's get into it. Curt, Dale, another wonderful day in the studio. Glad to be with you guys. Today's conversation, I think, is really going to matter to a lot of people. So, with the idea of talking about mattering, are you guys familiar with this term? What does this mean to you? How have you come across this?
What's interesting is that this just showed up on the radar. I think it was in January of 26, and we have a lot of followers that are responding to us with emails and saying, hey, you think about this, think about that. And within 3 days of the same week, I got 3 separate emails concerning a Wall Street Journal article that was referencing this book called Mattering, written by Jennifer Breheny Wallace. And it was something that was really thought-provoking for me, because it's people our age. How do we deal with how we matter in today's world, especially since exiting the career world? How do we matter within our families? And I'm like, maybe we need to talk about it and sort of roll it out. So prior to January, no, I didn't matter. No, I did matter. But the point is I saw all these things that were just bombarding me at the same time. And I'm like, there's something going on here that it's something we need to pay attention to, I believe.
And Adam, to answer your question, I was not familiar with the term mattering. Of course, hanging out with you guys, especially Curt, brought it to our attention the minute he learned about it. So I wasn't familiar with mattering. I'd always assumed that what we were doing, using the words like purpose and value and all of that, had to do with mattering. So when it came up, I wasn't shocked. But all of a sudden, it's way out there in the public. And since our conversation, like you, I've seen mattering show up in a lot of different places in conversations. People just all of a sudden say, well, I really want to matter. And that's why we thought we really had to have this conversation today.
I think this is really, really important, because if people don't see their value, they don't see how they're important. I think this is really a core tenet of human existence. And when you're a young person, when you're a teenager, it's, I think, probably easy to wonder, do I matter? Where do I fit in? That example of trying to find a tribe that I fit into. That's natural. You only live in that space for a short period of time. And then you grow into opportunity. And then maybe, as we've talked about in that book, Decade by Decade, survival and then significance. And you go through all of these episodes of life. But I wonder if there's a more important time in life to consider, do I still matter? If all of the things that I found esteem in and found confirmation or affirmation that I have something to contribute to society, I am somebody important, at least to somebody. Is there a more important time to consider mattering than after your career? And so I'm looking forward to discovering this and maybe get challenged or get my thinking tuned up with our guests.
So to your question, did you think of mattering prior to us having conversations back in January?
Yes. There was a talk about episodic instances. There was an instance where I questioned, do I matter?
Okay.
And it was in a time when I was in some pretty deep, pretty dark depression. And so as a result, I think I don't know if it's a natural space or a natural time to wonder that, but that's what happened to me. I started to wonder, do I even matter to anybody?
Yeah.
And do we use the word identity for mattering? Not to jump right into it, but
well, I can tell you my opinion, but it doesn't come from a place of education.
Yeah,
so
same here. I don't
somebody
know.
in the studio
anybody?
might help.
You know anybody?
Well, the subject of mattering is kind of new to us, I think, but really interested in finding out from somebody who's in the profession of mattering and kind of what their opinions are. But thought we'd bring in our friend of the Redirect podcast is Kipp Corbus, who is our on-call psychologist, making his third appearance on the podcast. We should have a round of applause.
Yeah,
for that,
rarefied air right there.
Have you gotten your
that's
coat yet? Have you gotten the coat yet?
Have you gotten the coat?
Yeah.
5-time host.
Right now
That's
it's
right.
a green coat, but
Yeah.
that's okay. Kipp is a licensed clinical psychologist with 2 decades of experience helping leaders grow and thrive. Over the past 19 years, he's worked as an executive coach and organizational development consultant across both the federal government and private sector, supporting individuals and teams through big transitions, leadership challenges, and conversations really about mattering. So, Kipp, welcome back to the Redirect podcast. And I've got to ask you, before we had asked you about coming on and talking about mattering, had you ever heard of the term mattering? Is that something that's really big and important in the world of psychology?
Yeah. No, when you guys gave me this topic, I thought absolutely this makes a ton of sense. It is an absolute, and I think you all talked about this a little bit in the beginning too, a fundamental human need. Mattering, what do you call it? Mattering, value, meaning. I cannot tell you how many I have conversations with individuals every day, and this is the fundamental topic, and it all comes down to that.
Even if they don't use that word, it's
Absolutely.
all baked in there.
Yep, absolutely. It is the root of what people think about and need and search for.
In Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where would you place it?
It's towards the top.
Yeah. I think it's the second one from the top. I'd have to go look at the graphic to
I know
figure
you're
it out.
challenging me to look back at my.
That's okay. While keep going, I'll look it up in case we can bring it back to it. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, it is when you start to get existential, when you start to think about that self-actualization, if we're going to Maslow's hierarchy, it is what you need. It is what drives people. It's what motivates people. I mean, Adam, you were talking about at the beginning. It can be isolating to not feel that, and it can feel really meaningful and helpful to feel it. And there's the part I will go back to my basic psychology. One of the first books I read in grad school was Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And that is fundamentally what the whole book is about. And I read that, 22 years ago now. Still, I should probably read it again, but it still resonates with me, and I still think about it. And I would say that's a core aspect of how I approach psychology and what clients come in asking for and searching for.
So if we're at the bar and I just bought you a beer, I said, hey, Kipp, what the heck is mattering? How would you just describe it to me in layman's terms?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So it is how you both see yourself and how others see you, and the value that you offer the world and others, I think is the most basic way I could see it. In that book, what's significant is Viktor Frankl was in a concentration camp, and he's there isolated, death imminent, and thinking, how do I survive? And the why he exists was what drove him to stay alive, to stay motivated, and to keep looking forward. And that, to me, is that inner thought, like when you're thinking about that inner thought you have every day, when you're going to bed, when you're laying in bed at night by yourself with just your thoughts. What is that value you offer? Why do you exist? How are you helpful to the world?
What's interesting is Adam, and when he was talking in the opening about, different stages of your life when you're a kid, how do I matter and all this stuff. And yeah, I can see that as a kid. I can also see it as a career person. I'm the provider. How do I matter? What am I doing? How am I doing it? But then again, when I get to the point of after career, I question, do I? Because I've invested so much of my time and energy into the work thing, in the being in that role of father, provider, husband, family, glue or whatever it might be. And then now, what is it? As we've talked about, we're hearing the word mattering more and more. And this book that I referenced in the beginning, Mattering by Jennifer Breheny Wallace, is sort of going to be the framework for our conversation today, because that's my only point of reference,
Sure.
other than mattering myself, I guess, to a degree. But now it's just becoming more prevalent out there.
Mm-hmm.
And why should we care about mattering in this demographic that we are right now, 55 and above?
Yeah. And I would say it's for everybody. But I think that 55 and above, as you start to get that more existential, what have I done with my life? Where do I want my life to be when I die? What is that going to look like? Or how am I going to be remembered? That is a core fundamental need for people.
You're talking more of a legacy type of thing. And we've had conversations
Is
about
that true?
legacy.
Are we talking about legacy?
Well, that's how I heard it. All right. Because my point is what you say, I don't really necessarily have a concern of my death because, I know where I'm going and I'm comfortable with that. And actually, I'm all right.
Yeah.
With that whole with that whole concept. The point is, it's not what I'm leaving, what of me is going to remain after I'm gone. It's the point of what am I doing on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Mm-hmm. And how do I matter to my adult children? How do I matter to my friends? How do I matter to the organizations that I'm in? Right now, I'm volunteering. I'm doing stuff. I'm engaged. Why do I do it? Because I have a passion for it, because I enjoy it, because I'm serving. I'm doing all these wonderful things. Do I evaluate that and saying, that makes me valuable? That makes sure that I matter? I don't think like that, Kipp.
You don't, say more. You don't think like that.
I don't do things for others to perceive me or for me to perceive myself as having value. I just go do.
Okay.
It's not a driving force to make Curt feel good on the inside that I matter, that I have value. However, on the other side, if I talk to somebody, I will say those words to other people. You are important. I am a coach. Okay. I think we've sort of talked about that. What do you mean? Uh-oh.
Get him. Get him. Sick him, Kipp.
All right.
Well, and I think it talks about in the book mattering a little bit too. It's not necessarily you are doing everything to matter. Like you're not consciously thinking every day, I have to do this to matter. If you make that your end goal of just mattering, you're going to get caught up in that. You will get caught up in
navel gazing.
Yeah. And it's more self than it is others.
Right. But what I'm hearing you say, so you said every day, a normal day of the week, and you asked the question earlier in one of your intros, do I matter?
Mm-hmm.
How do you assess that? How do you evaluate that? If you ask that question after a regular day, how do you answer that?
I matter. I mean, I make a statement to my youngest son, Alex. I say, make a difference today. And I believe that. I believe every day that we have, every minute that I'm awake, I have an opportunity to do something to help in a situation, to serve in a situation, to counsel, to listen, to help, to just be there for somebody and encourage. But I'm not like putting it in a bank, or I'm not, putting it over here to say, I matter, I value. It's just what you do.
There's a certain presence, just kind of being there and being.
Yep.
Do you matter?
Do I matter to me?
Yeah.
I imagine I matter, but that's I see more people on the outside wondering if I matter, whether I matter to me.
See, I think when we start talking about mattering, and Curt, you were really concerned about, do I matter?
Oh yeah.
But you're living a presence where you do matter. I believe it, but maybe now you're questioning, are you seeing that? And that's going to come from somebody else.
Right.
Think.
Well, but I'm not looking for it. That's the point, because there's this humility part, right? I'm not here to be doing things for people as a resume builder. I'm not doing things for the reasons of doing something. I'm doing it out of something in my heart, my feeling of another person, my seeing a situation where I know I have the skill set, I know I have the personality, I know that I can be an encourager to somebody, where I can just jump in and say, all right, let's go. So I'm being that person to someone. I'm being an encourager to someone to help them understand their matter and their value, but I don't necessarily need it for me.
So if I can isolate, what it seems like we're talking about is assessment and acknowledgement of whether or not we do matter. And I'm trying to assess whether or not I matter to other people. Now, that is important, but the realization of mattering might be separate unto itself. 100 years ago, existence and contribution of each family member was a little more utilitarian. If you extracted one of those members of the family, you get to see where that little micro society starts to break down because we're missing that physical, emotional contribution. In that utilitarian example, mattering is clear. It's ever present. But now, since we live in a life of such ease and convenience, because everything comes to us just because we wish it to be so, it's possibly a little harder to see where I am contributing in real time in a utilitarian example. And for the sake of senior citizens, it goes beyond that utilitarian example, right? It's what I can bring as far as wisdom and stability and guidance to the people around me.
No. I think that what you're saying makes a lot of sense. So I'll go back to your Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When you have those basic needs of food, shelter, those, you can, that's pretty concrete. Do I matter? Am I getting the food? Is there a shelter? And I think that is probably more true in your younger years as your provider, parent, those types of things. I think that is very concrete and easy to grasp. You can say, all right, I checked that box. It's pretty easy to see. As you get beyond that and you have those things you need, or you're not providing those basic needs anymore, that becomes a little more existential, a little bit more ambiguous what that looks like. And I think that I'm thinking through this. I'm thinking through this with y'all as well. That makes sense. Why, to your 55 and older question, or as your role shifts, and you can talk about that from a job standpoint too. When you have that, they're basic. I am getting the salary. I am doing this role at work. As all of those roles become less clear and more ambiguous day to day, I think that's a natural question is, do I matter? And what does that look like?
In the book, it talks about erosion of mattering. All right. And it says that with rising things of loneliness, burnout, lack of purpose, that the concept of mattering erodes. When I read this book and talking about work and my role in work, I thought I mattered. But really, it wasn't a personal mattering. It was mattering to the expectations and goals of a company, which is based on achievement, which in my mind is different than mattering.
Absolutely. So Frankl talks about mattering is not universal, it's personal. So the challenge and danger of social media, those types of things, is you see what other people post, you see their ideal life, and you're saying in yourself, that's what matters. I have to have that to actually matter. That might not be what matters for you. It's got to be, that's an external mattering, and how do other people see me? At the core, mattering is what's personal to you and how you view it and how you feel it.
Perfect segue, because I'd love to get into this aspect of this book, Mattering. They talk about this mattering core, and there's 5 areas: recognition, reliance, importance, ego extension, and attunement. Now, let's talk about recognition. All right. According to the book, it says you and your actions are valued and your absence would be felt. Now, a story that they talk about that references a first responder, which I found fascinating.
Yeah.
They said in the world of the first responder, there's a lot of depression. There's a lot of, I don't know if I'm really making a difference, and all these types of things. And they brought out to the point is there's no closure. So when a first responder shows up at an accident, they do what they have to do to deal with the accident. They deal what they have to do with the people, and then the ambulance takes the people off. So this one guy, a great story of this young guy who started as a fireman and worked his way up to a fire chief, started bringing people in to say, let's evaluate how we handled the situation to make sure that we matter and how we're doing our job. And then let's have somebody follow up with the people that were involved, because none of these guys that go back to the fire station and they sit around and they don't know, did they live? Did they die? What's their life like? And all of a sudden they're like, what we're doing doesn't matter. So recognition, how important is it for someone to recognize that they're having an impact on someone and someone else, in your opinion?
Oh, absolutely. That is one of the things I will do in sessions with people. is pause and say, talk about what you've done, talk about what you've accomplished, talk about what's been fun or interesting or meaningful to you, because people don't pause to do that. So if you think about that first responder approach, and I watched The Pit. I don't know if everybody's
yeah.
And so if you think about what they're doing, right. But if you think about what they're doing every day, like they go to one patient, save their life, move on. Patient dies, they move on. They have to keep going. You don't have that time to sit back and reflect. I think that's why this probably resonated with you all a little bit too, because it's a time to pause, step back and say, oh, what does that look like? Because you're talking about just even the basics of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You go to Monday, you move on to Tuesday, you forget about Monday, and you just go, all right, what do I do today? If you don't take that time to step back and reflect, then how do you really know?
We went through this at work once, and I remember we always remembered or talked about what went wrong. And we had a Monday morning meeting. I said, you know what? I want to hear about all the wins from last week, because we as humans go to what did we do wrong? You know, whether it's a first responder or it's what we did last week at work, we had to stop, think about it and say, what can we celebrate? What did we do right last week? And let's start the week on that big positive note.
The professional iteration of that right now, the buzzword in corporate America is feedback. That you get feedback for your how things turned out, and the current connotation of feedback is all negative. What could I have done better?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
And why?
Exactly.
Yeah. And why is it all negative? Why can't it be also what went well?
And if we're going through this thing about how do we matter, we're thinking about everything maybe we did wrong and not focusing on that.
You know, in the industry that I was in and having the opportunity to work with Nike and being up at the Nike campus, their big phrase is celebrate the wins. And that, you know, it's a sports term. Let's celebrate the win. And they had something great happen in the day. They'd shut everything down and they host a party for their employees at the spontaneous thing. If like somebody wins a tournament and all of their stuff is being, you know, on television left and right. Let's celebrate the win of Tiger Woods or, you know, Scotty Scheffler or golf's on my mind.
So I love how you do that, Kipp.
Yeah.
And sit there. Okay. Take a look at, you know, everything that you've done well in your past. I don't think probably people do that very well.
Well, and I'm going to go back, even Curt, how you were viewing it before. So you said, you know, I don't want to just give us, I don't need those bullet points for my resume. I want to be humble. I want to be open. People resist it because they think, oh, I'm just bragging, or they avoid it, I think, for that reason. That is a fundamental need. That is like air to people. And you need to do that to feel good. And that's a shift, I think, from thinking I'm just being selfish and bragging. And I hear that constantly from people. Like they get uncomfortable when I say, that sounds awesome what you did. They get uncomfortable with that because it feels not humble. And instead, there is a fundamental need to that. That is your building block, your foundation for functioning, for being, for mattering.
I can relate to that 100%. And I understand even to the point of not accepting those things and always looking ahead is overwhelming because you see all the things that need to be done as opposed to taking time, reflecting, sitting back and saying, that went pretty well. And I need to instill more of that in my life, more reflection time. So thank you. Add it to my bill.
The meter's running. The meter's running.
It's getting very costly having Kipp here, and everybody listening is learning more about Curt. So that's going to be fun.
So we're talking mattering core. Is there
the next
four others?
Yeah, the next one is reliance. All right. So that means you feel needed because others depend on you. All right. Now, the story here was helping others, and they had a variety of stories, but one of them that they really hung on was how a daughter was caring for her mother and that her mother was getting old and older and such. And I think a lot of people can relate to that today. I mean, especially people like yourself, Kipp, as you disclosed in one of your previous episodes, you've got young kids, you got a family you're raising yourself, and you got parents. And you're sort of managing both lives and different lives. And your role within your parents, I don't know if they're at the point of depending on you, but it's one of those things that as a child of older parents, you feel the need to be involved? Is it obligation? Is it responsibility? Is it because I just want to be with them on the journey because it is that journey?
It's all of it. Yeah, the key thing I think the author says in Mattering is reliance, but not too much, I think is what. So I think
not codependence.
Correct. So I think and I think that article you all sent, I thought was a nice illustration of how you balance that, because that need and that reliance does feel good, right? If nobody's relying on me, nobody needs me, then what am I doing? I'm just here for myself, which doesn't feel great. But I think there's also that point where I need to be relied on constantly or by everybody. That's where you can get into a challenging part. So it's a tough balance to find how you get that right middle ground. I have teenagers. I can think about how you balance that right. They still need me, but I also want them to be autonomous and independent in certain ways, but finding that right balance. Same thing for older kid. You want that reliance, and you still want to matter to them, but you also know they have their own lives and you want to give them their space. That is a tough balance to find.
Yeah. In that article that you were referencing, the thing that struck out to me was the person that was telling the story was saying, I know that my kids love me, but I don't know if I matter to them or I have value to them. I shared that as well with my boys to a degree, in the sense that when I was younger and I'd come home from work, there's nothing like kids running up to you when you come home from work and saying, hey, Dad, how was your day? And
when you're Superman.
Yeah. And then you sit on the couch and they just want to sit next to you because they want to be by you and they want to share something with you that they did. And yes, Jackie and I think, have done a tremendous job in giving a foundation to our kids, and they're off doing their thing. But then here we are. There's that part that we're not getting. And so then it may make us think like, well, do we really matter? Because they're doing their thing, but we need to reflect.
Do I still matter because I don't matter like I did? And
the dependence level change.
Yeah, that progression of our own lives, especially into our older years, our sense of how we matter changes. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I think you described it perfectly. It changes fundamentally at each phase you're at. Like you've talked about with redirect, it changes. As soon as your job goes away and that is cut off, it's a different identity. I think it's a different mattering. It's a different role. It's not as clear. And ambiguity, when it's not smacking into the face, it's hard to recognize. And especially if you're not pausing and taking that time to think about it.
Oh, this definitely then is a furtherance of the identity crisis.
Right.
That shift in of what I was doing, how I contributed, and I found my identity in my career, which I think is a flaw in our logic, but it's natural. But progressing that out of career, where do I find my identity? How do I matter? And I think that's a very clear way to illustrate that.
I think this would be a good time to take a quick break. If you're enjoying our show, we'd be incredibly grateful if you could take a moment to comment. And if you like what you're hearing, leave us a 5-star review. Your feedback not only makes our day, but helps other listeners discover our content. Your support through listening, sharing, following, and reviewing means the world to us and helps our podcast grow. Thanks so much for being part of the Redirect family. So let's now get back to our conversation.
So going back real quick to you guys, I want your opinion, Adam and Dale. You heard my little story about when I was younger and how I'd like to have the kids around and such. You guys are both grandfathers.
Right.
You still have sort of that feeling that I was describing, but it's a generation removed.
So let me tell you a quick story. When my father came home when we were kids and my dad would walk in the door, my dad would yell out, "The king is home."
Oh, geez.
It was hilarious. And we would all come running up. To your question, Curt, okay, now when I show up as Pops, you all know I'm called Pops, the grandkids come running. And they come run and they get all excited and they jump up and they hike. It's the same thing my father did. I mean, all of a sudden, I'm looking at this role as Pops, as a grandfather, in a light that so gives you value, so you matter, because now, I'm the fun guy. I'm going to start playing games. There's a tremendous amount in this new part of my life, new redirection, being a grandfather, is something that, boy, I really feel like I matter. And it's now being given to me by my grandkids. But how about my kids?
So there's recognition there.
So
there's also reliance there, because they depend on you every now and then. You got to come on over and help because I got a doctor's appointment.
Yeah. And there's a lot of the things that we did as parents that come back again. But now I'm giving them to my grandparent or my grandkids.
You're going to do it better.
And that's another episode, Curt. We're going to bring our kids. We're going to bring our kids, and we'll have that conversation about how I did it versus how they did it. But there's a lot of fun lines that you got to analyze. But
I found when my kids were in their late 20s, it was at a time where, if I could stay on topic, I don't think I mattered a lot. They didn't come to me much. I didn't have a lot of audience or influence in their life. They weren't interested in me contributing. There was an inherent distance there, and why that is could be a long conversation. But then they started having kids, and I mattered on now two very interesting fronts. I mattered to my grandkids in a way that did feel reminiscent of those times when it's just so much fun. They jump on your lap, dad's home, the king is home, whatever. There's so much responsibility I don't have as far as rearing and discipline and provision and all of these things that I'm just free to pour into those little kids. And it is awesome. But the other side is the new reemergence of mattering to my adult children, because that has completely shifted, where I went from them being in their late or mid to late 20s, where I just quite frankly didn't matter. And that's okay. It's a season, because now I very much do matter. They rely on me for a lot of different things, more than just, grandparenting. So
I like how you talked about seasons, right? Mm-hmm. And how that plays out. Just curious. The one thing, so I think the grandchildren running up saying, "Hey, Pops, Grandpa's home," that's smacks you in the face. That's pretty clear. When they're in their 20s, because that is where I could see it being a challenging season. Like, what do I do? How did you work through that? What did you do? Did you find any ways to value or matter during that phase?
Good question. So I probably didn't do it well. There were times I struggled because I couldn't recognize it. And when you're in a season, you don't know if this season, is this the way it is for the rest of my life? Yep. So there was a big chunk of that time where I was hurt. It was distance I couldn't close, and I didn't know how to deal with it. But there was also nothing I could do about it. And so I didn't force myself into the situation. I gave us space, partly because I had no choice. But I gave the situation space, and sure enough, that season ran its course, and new opportunities to reconnect or deepen relationship reemerged, and it was fine.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm thinking through it. There's an opportunity. So I'm thinking, like, for the listeners and just kind of that. So you worked through it, right? You kind of had to get through it. Was your mindset? I'd be curious, and that's what I'd be working with somebody on. And you're exactly right. I love how you said it. You don't know you're in that season in the moment, but I think that's where the pausing and the presence and asking that question, because there's going to be people don't have grandkids, or grandkids live elsewhere, or different situations. There's still needs. That doesn't take away that fundamental need.
Yeah.
So thinking through what is in your control, how you seek that out, and how you find that would be a fascinating. When your kids in their 20s, that would have been a fascinating conversation.
And the advice I would give myself, the advice I would give my parenting those 20-year-old kids is just try to help. Is just try to be available, be accessible. Don't bring a lot of judgment. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. Unsought advice is never asked for and often resented, right? And so I think, speaking to myself back then, I would say, hey, it's not personal. It's their choices in life right now. It's the way they are, as far as trying to make their own way. Mm-hmm. Give them space, give them grace, and just be accessible is probably the advice I would give myself.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking for that. And it's 7 or 8 years for me. So
Yeah.
you're helping me with that too.
But the season, going back to the season, and I think about it, my role, and this is the thing that Curt brings up a lot. My role to them, then was to work and to provide a house and give provisions to them so they can grow. My wife's role was to be there for everything because she was home, I was traveling. And that role changed. And now I'm home, and now I'm starting to ask my sons these mattering questions because I want to be more involved. I don't want to be just the guy that provides the fun. I want to get into deep conversations with them. I want to talk about end of life. I want to talk about a lot more things. And I now know that, and for our audience, you got to reach out and you got to ask those questions, and you've got to end it. It's just a different season. I'm in a different role, but ask those deeper questions and get into it. And I think you'll find out that most people will be willing to have that mattering conversation.
And that leads to the next point, which is importance. All right, which means you feel significant because you're prioritized. You were just talking about that, Dale, right? Now, all of a sudden, you want to bump up the ladder in a different world as opposed to being the provider. You want to be the emotional guy to be there and support them, right? So they talk about this Moai groups, which is Japanese, small, long-lasting, intentional social circles that provide support and community. Why don't you talk about the value of importance and prioritizing how we feel prioritize to sort of answer what Dale was talking about, Kipp?
Yeah, no, it's being part of something that's bigger than yourself, right? So that community concept, Peter Block, who's a OD, organization development consultant, who's in Cincinnati, has a whole thing about community and really talks about that. And there's a lot of talk right now. Community has gone away. There's not gathering places. There's not those common areas.
Bowling alleys.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys, you're part of that men's group, right? That's where you have that community. Talk about how that's important to you. I mean, I think that I've heard you all talk about that and how valuable that is. And that sense of community adds some meaning and mattering to you all.
And I think another word that is really strongly tied to this is relationship. Because once you have that understanding of prioritizing, well, then now you're getting deeper in relationship to understand where you fit, how you fit, and how we can improve, and encouragement and all those other things that I think just that adds significance to our lives, is having those deeper relationships, which is bringing importance.
Yeah, and I think that's where we get locked in on this is what the relationship I need, this is what matters. Whether it's a partner, whether it's grandkids, whether it's kids, there are other ways to get that. And so that's why I'm thinking about when you're in when your kids are in their 20s, that might not be your community the same way you remember it, but are there other ways? Just like you all talk about with the men's group, that's your community. You've sought that out. You've done that. This podcast is another way you're building community. So you're bringing people in, you're talking to them. The three of you are doing this. You're hearing feedback from listeners. That's all a way you have created. And it's not it's not the textbook way to do it, or that you would say this is it, but you've been creative in creating that. And I think that's the innovation and what people miss out on times and feel stuck. If I don't have this one thing, it doesn't matter. Just I think the examples you have, even just with the three of you and what you've created, is a perfect example of how you can create those relationships and build that community together.
And one thing that just came to me as you were talking, and my nature is I look at the whole thing. And as we've been talking, we're talking about mattering, and you're hearing all of the different things that are being a part of this mattering conversation. Why don't we take mattering and let's make a pie out of it? What percentage of my mattering is with grandkids, my adult children, my friends, my service, and my volunteer? What percent of my mattering is a part-time job? You're looking at of the pie. So, for example, when you brought it up, you guys are blessed to have grandkids. I don't. So that part of my pie is small. I'd love it to be big, but I can't do anything.
We need to
about
get you.
that.
We need to get you like a rental car kind of thing where you can go rent some grandkids.
Well, I'm at kids club. That's where I get my kids.
There you go.
That's what he does.
So I go to my second.
I don't
and third
have
grade
that pie.
because
You do.
because I'm filling that void. I want that pie to be bigger.
Yeah.
So I'm finding ways to get it bigger because, as you said, That's a need that I want to have. And I feel like I'm a part of their lives. I'm there every week.
Sure.
So they rely on me. There's a reliance. I'm being recognized. I have importance.
Right.
I'm prioritizing that because that's something I want to do, which then gets into the next part as far as ego extension. All right. Now, I found this a little interesting. I think this is something that we can help others with, right? So it says, you feel cared because others are invested in your well-being. And what I love this one, I want everybody to think about, imagine you're going to Madison Square Garden, you see Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier going toe-to-toe in the ring. It's a boxing match. You got a guy in the corner. It's the corner man. I'm just going to leave it at that, Kipp. I think you probably know when I say corner man what that reference is. Why don't you just talk about it? What is it like being a corner man to somebody in life today?
Yeah, no, I love that. And you all introduced, so I learned stuff from this too. And you introduced that concept to me from this book and when we talked the other day. And I think it's really helpful. And I like to compartmentalize things at times to kind of think through. Everything feels messy. Let's compartmentalize it. There's two pieces. It's what do you have people as your corner man, corner person? How can you be that person for other people as well? And I think that's a unique way as we're thinking about creativity and how you create that mattering and not just hope it comes to you, but create it. It's seeking out those cornermen for you. And which I think is a more fun and even more unique opportunity with more flexibility. How do you seek out to be that cornerman for other people? That's a concept. I'm going to use that and steal that because I haven't thought about that before.
Good visual.
But I think that's like, if you think of that, that's finding ways to receive it is not always easy. Finding ways to give it, I think you can seek that out and have some creative opportunities. That's something within your control that can look a bunch of different ways. You all have described different ways that's even looked just from the three of you. I just think of those two things as been a helpful conceptualization.
And another thing that could bring it to a little bit more value is a financial term of investment. So if I'm investing in you, like you invest in a business or you invest in a personality, I'm investing in you. That means I'm going to be that outside eye that's watching you to make sure that you're doing what you said you were going to do, be responsible for what you said you're going to be responsible, as well as knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses, and being able to know what you can handle, but then also make sure that I'm going to throw other stuff at you to make you grow. And that to me is so vital, to have that invested interest and to help somebody and support. And that's something I really enjoy doing. That's a big part of my pie.
That's great.
Is helping others, at least when they ask. I'm not volunteering that.
It just goes to our audience, and we talk about this all the time, is, mentoring is a really, really big thing. It's a big deal, and it keeps coming back in a lot of different ways. But it's, again, using the gifts that you have and bringing them forward. Right. And bringing them forward is that opportunity. But having the person who has gifts to be able to help others move forward, to give them that boost in the ring, is just a powerful opportunity for us. But again, it's going to be us stepping forward to go make those happen.
For our adult children listeners that still have parents, another thing you can think about is don't dismiss. And I think that's sometimes a feeling as you get older, as you start to lose connection and lose relationship, you feel put out. I'm over there now.
Yep.
You see me on the special occasions.
You're out to pasture. Say it.
You said it. But don't dismiss the person. Be that corner person because you know them pretty well, and all they want to do is to be seen. And I think that's a very important part as far as helping one's ego. The last topic is attunement. And it says, you feel deeply understood and meaningfully responded to.
Not feeling deeply understood, that would be a fascinating conversation to have. There is a part of it, and Dale, I'm going back to when you're talking about the mentoring piece. Part of it is you have to have that self-value. So like that recognition of what you do offer. I could see people saying, I have nothing to offer. Why would anybody want to talk to me?
Who am I?
Yeah. There is some self-work to do first before you can get that reinforcement and that value felt from others. There's got to be some of that value that you feel for yourself. And so I think, Dale, you're at that point where you've got that, you can look back at what you've done. You've got that confidence. Having people help you find that, I bet if you ask people, as you talk to people, there is a lot more value than you recognize just in your day-to-day. It gets lost. It gets forgotten. If you sit and make that pie chart, you can do it yourself. You can ask other people. I bet you there's a lot more pieces on that than whatever one thing that's kind of sticking out there for you. I know one of the things when we were talking about this podcast, the question that just kind of came up, and I hadn't thought about this until we were talking about the book Mattering and all that, was I was curious as we were talking about each of you and kind of how you view things, how you matter. Asked you, I gave a little homework assignment and for myself too, and said, ask, your kids why you matter. What value are you to them? And I think I asked each of you to ask that. And that just came out naturally from the conversation we had. Curious how that went, what you heard, what you learned.
Such a great exercise. It was one of those things that I'm trying to do now in my season of trying to get more real with, my boys and my daughters-in-law. And I didn't ask them, but I did ask my sons. I sent out a little text to each of them saying, hey, doing a podcast on mattering. And one of the questions is, what value am I to you? And I got great feedback. Tough question, but I said, hey, just off the top of your head, I don't want you to think too deeply about it. And I got from my boys things like, you're a guide, you offer wisdom, your guidance and expertise across any of life questions I have, I can come to you. You're a challenger and an ally, constantly pushing and challenging me to be better. Gosh, yeah, when you used to record all my tennis, but adventures and more. This is the one that I pull from my dad. My dad was a great example of this. I continued it, and it was being a ringleader and a spark. Always bringing the fun, pushing adventure and experiences, excitement, and acting as the best friend. My, other kind of surprising was you're no longer a parenting parent, but a lifelong friend. Though you'll always be dad, we revel in doing fun things together and hanging out, a mentor for big life questions, and being a grandfather. Both came back with the role I play as a grandfather, and being a source of fun for them, which I know I bring, but I want to be deeper on some other areas, obviously. So, I think those were some of the things. My one son actually came back and said, you know what? It'd be interesting on your podcast to flip it and say, what do y'all feel are your roles? And then how that lined up with the feedback. So I think we're definitely going to have to come back to that one, but go.
And my feedback, I sent the boys a text in advance so they had time to think about it. And then I followed up with a phone call and had conversations or met in person. Answers I got was my value changes over time based upon where we are in time. I set the benchmark in becoming a quality man. That's cool. A teacher, a coach, worked hard, and he leads with action. That's cool. My value is ongoing, and I love this one. There are questions I have not yet asked, and there's still time to learn by your lead. So that's the door's open, and there's opportunities there. There is value in having you here now. Just the value of me being alive is important to them, because when I'm not, well, we're obviously going to lose that, right? So your presence alone is value in itself. And then my older son, Ryan, had a perspective living in Hawaii for 7 years. And this came out of his mouth. He says, North America, we sort of have this cultural thing that when our parents are getting older, that we look for senior living facilities and we sort of move them into a direction where they're among themselves, with others. He says in Hawaii, it's not that. It's the priority of the family member, and they're very much involved with generational living. They're involved with generational life. And he says, and having that experience that he had in Hawaii is what he wants to be with us. And I found that something that is, it's always nice to hear, but there's no expectations of us, my wife and myself, to say, we expect you to take care of us. But for him to be able to be so open to say, well, no. And as he said, for all the years that you took care of me, if I can take care of you for the number of years that you have when it becomes difficult, it's going to be my honor. And that to me that made me sit down and had to pull out a couple of Kleenexes after that one. What about you, Adam?
So I have 2 sons. I have 2 stepdaughters. 2 of all of those are married. So I have 6 in my immediate circle. I sent a text just like Dale did, and I got responses from 5. And it was crazy. I had no idea. It was just so rich and full. There was a lot of content. I actually had to boil it down for the sake of this episode, put it into ChatGPT to get it summarized for me.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And some of the notes were a foundation of unconditional love, the rock and cornerstone of the family, a source of wisdom, guidance, and perspective, a mentor who balances influence with approachability, a servant leader who shows up, generational legacy builder.
Wow.
And there's bullets underneath all of that. So it was rich. I mean, it was good for me to hear it, and I wonder what it was like for them to go collect those thoughts and start to put some particular language about it. Because when it's one thing to think about it, it's another thing to actually articulate those thoughts and what that does to you, what it did to them to go put those thoughts together and actually share them. There's obviously some vulnerability built in there.
So, Kipp, you're in a different situation. Your kids are still home. What was your feedback that you got from that?
Yeah, my kids are 13 and 15. They struggled with, like, I don't know, you're my dad, you're there. So that was like, so they struggled with it, which I was happy. I'm like, that's okay. Like,
It's natural.
Struggle with that. So that actually, and that was significant for me, even just there. So I heard that from the 3 of you, like presence, being there, rock, presence is sometimes, your presence alone, I think, Curt, you said, that's significant and meaningful. And like you said, my kids are at a different part of life, so I am there. But my son said sports, so I coach them a lot, push me to do things, pretty much everything, teach me stuff, how to drive, make me food, some of those basic things. My daughter said sports, again, I coached her, calming down, being happy, and help me emotionally and physically. So just, again, it was interesting to see them pause, struggle with it, and just to come up with some way to articulate it.
I want to say thank you for giving us that homework assignment, because it did make us see and hear, and we felt seen, we felt heard, and it was nice to sort of get that recognition, right, that we've sort of talked about in these core mattering foundations. But here's something that our listeners can do. If you question on whether you matter or value, ask the question of the people around you to see if you do. And I probably will say you're going to be pleasantly surprised on the things that you hear that makes you realize you do matter.
And so if you're looking for a way to do that, listeners, what I did is I sent my kids a prompt, individual texts to each one of them, and said, hey, I've got some homework I got to do for this podcast. And you could say, hey, I got some homework, because we're assigning it to you now.
From a podcast.
I got some homework from a podcast. What is my value to you? I said, there's no context here. However you interpret that, what is my value to you? And then I told them, no pressure. Feel free not to answer if that's not something you're comfortable with doing. And however you share it is going to be appreciated. And I got great feedback.
Yeah.
And just to even expand, it doesn't have to be to your kids. It can be to your partner. It can be to a friend, coworker.
Volunteer organization.
Absolutely. So that is it doesn't, and I think we get too locked in at times of it has to be this way and this is the only value. There are so many different ways you can add value to the world. And I think that's why I like the vagueness of that question, because it's open-ended.
Yep.
And it doesn't have to be, it can be open-ended to anybody. And there's a lot of different ways to be creative with that. You guys could say that. I could have you do an exercise for the 3 of you. I won't make you do that.
Thing I love about it is this is going to be sans social media. This is a great question, right? Yeah. To your people that you want to matter to.
So, Kipp, again, thank you. What could you do to sum up this conversation? Do you have, what are
Like
the
make
sound
application
bites?
for 55 and up.
Yeah, or 55 and up and even everybody else.
Yeah.
Because we all got to matter.
Yeah. And this came to me kind of from the conversation, and I'm just thinking through this. So people are hesitant to go this way because I think it feels not humble and too selfish. I would look at mattering as that core fundamental need that everybody has, and it's okay to have. And I'd search out ways. There is a search that you are in control of to do to find that and achieve that. So there's some active piece of it versus passive, and it's okay to seek that out.
Food, clothing, shelter, mattering.
Kipp, thank you again for joining us. It's such a pleasure to have you in here, and we're so fortunate that you have the willingness to hang around me.
No kidding.
These guys are good. I'm the one.
Yeah. You guys got to...
You can get me out of this straitjacket right now. I really feel comfortable.
Thank you so much for being on again, our third appearance, and we really appreciate it. And the value we get from it is extensive. And send us a note, and we'll tell you how valuable you are to us. Thank you.
And thanks for joining us on the Redirect Podcast.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Redirect Podcast. We would like to thank the University of Cincinnati 1819 Innovation Hub for allowing us to record our episodes at the eSports Innovation Lab recording studio. Don't forget to tell your friends about the Redirect Podcast and have them follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Instagram. Want more information? Do you have a question for Curt, Dale, or Adam? Or would you like us to consider a topic that interests you for a future podcast? Send us an email at info@redirect-u.com. Remember, the journey isn't over. It's just redirecting. There's purpose in your life. Find it and do something about it. Hey, I've got one more comment. The Redirect Podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. We engage in an open, honest conversations about personal growth, life transitions, and the lessons we've learned through our own experiences. While we speak as experts in our own lives, we are not licensed therapists, medical professionals, or certified coaches. The content shared on the Redirect Podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the guidance of qualified professionals for any physical, mental, or emotional concerns that you may have. We're grateful to share this space with you and hope that our stories inspire reflection and connection. If you're in need of more support, we encourage you to connect with a trusted professional who can help.